All right, so at this point, if you're watching this video, you are looking for sources for your paper. Now, the first resource to find good sources for your paper is the CCRI Library. So to get started, all you do is go to ccri.edu/library, and you can search a variety of sources. So you can go with books and see what books are accessible for you through the school, or you can search for articles and databases. The CCRI Library also has some nifty resources before you begin your search. So you can search their research guides, which if you click, it can help you. I would just click all guides just to see what is available in terms of any classes you may be taking, or just to brush up on some citation help. So for example, here, Citation Help, it covers plagiarism, which you all know by now, especially if you've read the syllabus. Plagiarism is bad, okay? And it is grounds for academic reprimands in terms of failing the class, failing the assignment, and expulsion from the college. So this is just a quick video on plagiarism, and it also you can also review citation rules, how to cite. Remember, in the English department, we use MLA, Modern Language Association, which you will also have access to my PowerPoint and my recorded lecture on that. But this also gives you some citation guides according to MLA here on the library website. Now, you can also request help from a librarian. You can go to the help and chat button, where you can type a question and see if the answer is already there, especially if you need to set up your library account. Your CCRI ID should be your library card, but if you need help setting that up, there are some FAQs and the library hours and location as well. And there is the chat. The chat is offline. Let's see. It says it's offline, but they do have the chat option, I guess probably when the library is in session. And going back to the library, let me see, there's a chat button here as well. You can also book an appointment with the librarian. So, and of course, you can also always come to me with any questions. Now, let's get into searching for a source. So I'm going to come up with a topic first. That should be step one to begin with, right? Because if you don't know what you're searching for, why are you on the website? So let's say I'm going to write a pretend essay right now, and I'm going to write it on fairy tales. So I want to search for a book that says fairy tales. So let's start with fairy tales. Now, this again, because I searched for books that are accessible through the college, I come up with some books. Fairy Tales, A New History. The beauty of this is that it comes up with a summary, right? This work overturns traditional views of the origins of fairy tales and their documents and documents their actual origins and transmission. Where did Cinderella come from? Puss in Boots, Rapunzel. Okay, so that seems interesting, right? We see the subjects here and we see that it is available, right? And there is an ebook. So I'm going to click on the ebook. I don't know where I'm going with this paper yet, right? But this is how you generate ideas, right? Because you might have a broad umbrella topic and you want to go narrowing it down because you don't want to cover too much, because it will take a book, right? This book is called Fairy Tales. That's how much information can go in there. You can literally fit volumes of information. So you want to go narrowing the scope of your topic into something that you can argue in the length of your paper. So I'm going to keep looking. Well, here's the table of contents. Why a new history of fairy tales? 2 accounts of the Grimm's tale, the folk as creator, the book as source, the late 17th and 18th century layers, 2 inventors of the fairy tale, a new history. So let's see. Where am I going with this? What do I like? This is where it prompts you to ask more questions, right? You should be narrowing down your research questions so that you aren't spending hours and hours looking for sources that are going to take you in many directions. So here's why I'm going to pause and say, well, what do I want to say about fairy tales? Maybe I want to argue that the original fairy tales were better than the adaptations, right? So let's say I want to argue and take this even narrower. Let's say I want to argue that the original Little Mermaid story or the original Cinderella story is better than the Disney current version, right? The watered down version, so to speak. So maybe that's a starting point, right? That's a starting point of a thesis, right? Because a thesis starts with an opinion. And my opinion is that original is better than the new Disney-fied version. So maybe I'm going to look at the first chapter. That might be pertinent to what I am trying to argue, right? And then I can go building a thesis. You don't have to have a thesis right away, but you should start with an opinion and an idea, and try to get as specific and narrow within that idea so that you can look for specific sources about that. So let me see what this chapter has to say about the new fairy tales, the new history of fairy tales. So this beautiful, it has an introduction, so it'll tell me what this is about, right? So I'm just gonna skim through it. I'm gonna scan it and just kind of see what it's talking about. And if I feel like it's not going to be regarding, it's not going to be about what I am trying to say about the Little Mermaid, the original, being better than the Disney version, or Cinderella, the original, being better than the Disney version, then I'm going to move on, because I don't expect you to read all of this, right? You're going to be looking through lots of sources until you find the sources that you need for your argument. So let's see. I'm just skimming. I'm going to say, no, this is not relatable to what I'm trying to argue, right? Even if I don't know exactly what I'm trying to argue, I know that this is not down that lane. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change my keywords. I'm going to play around with these keywords. So let's say fairy tales, original. So I'm going to use the semicolon, originals. So let's see what comes up. And keep in mind, I'm still in books, right? Not in all of the categories. So maybe there's not enough books that will come out, with what I want to say. So I'm going to go back to the original page, right? The original CCRI Library. I'm just going to close some of these windows. And I'm going to go to articles and databases. Now, the beautiful part about articles and databases is that I can search for, more recent information. So articles, especially journal articles and magazines, are published on a more frequent basis than a book. It can take a year to publish a book, whereas articles are published on sometimes weekly, sometimes quarterly, sometimes, every few months, sometimes 2 times a year. So I can go and find more, recent information. You want to stay towards the last 10 years, depending on the class or the paper that you're writing. You might want to stay within the last 5 years. So I like to go to Academic Search Complete because, like it says in the title, it's complete. It gives you a complete overview of all of the information across databases. So I'm going to go to Academic Search Complete. And then I'm going to search fairy tales. All right, so fairy tales and original. And why not? I'm going to add Disney, right? Because that's going to bring anything that touches on Disney fairy tales into my search. So I'm going to hit search. And right now I only have 9 results. That's fine. Let's see what they are. Sometimes you'll get thousands of results. Sometimes you won't get any, right? So if I look here, it is from 1997 to 2017. And like I said, you want to stay within the last 10 years. So let's go to 10 years ago was 2011. So that took away 4 results. So let's see what the okay. The slipper still fits an updated Cinderella. Okay, so I said I wanted to argue that Cinderella, the original, was better or not. And remember, these sources do not need to agree with you. You can find sources that are saying the opposite of what you're trying to argue, right? Because that way you can rebut what they have to say. You can say, this is what they say, and I disagree because, right? And you can tear down their argument. That is a great way to prove your point, by tearing down the opposition. So let's see what this article says, and I can just scan it and see. Okay, so this is about a performance of Cinderella. So it's not relevant to what I have to say. So let me go back to my results. That's not what I wanted. Let's see what this one's about. Disney looks for musical magic. And nope. So that's about a Disney show. All right, so let's rework these. Let's rework these keywords. So I said the original Little Mermaid, right? So that's by Hans Christian Andersen. Hans Christian Andersen, The Little Mermaid. Let's see if anything comes up in terms of those keywords. So it says no results were found. So let's look for or. We can switch, right? Because we can search for and, or not, right? So let's see if anything comes up. So here we go. We have a lot of keywords here, and we still have my annual filters. I'm just going to put it to 2021. So that came up with a lot of results. Obviously, you're not going to read all of these, right? So you want to, let's limit some of these. So you don't want book reviews. You want academic journals. Those tend to be the more reliable sources. And if you want to make it even more reliable, because you want to make sure that you're verifying the accuracy and the information in these, you can click peer reviewed. That just means that they have been reviewed for the information they contain by other people in the field. All right, so that brought me to 667. So let me look at what these are saying. The fairy tale is a place of memory. A comparative study of fairy tale and rap narratives. Some of these. All right. All right, let's see this one. Cruel fairy tales. Now, this Again, you read the introduction. Sometimes you'll see it as an abstract, and it'll tell you what this article is about. That way you don't have to read the whole article. So let me see. Okay, so this is talking about a different type of book. Now I know I'm out of here, right? It is a process. Research, you're not just going to magically find what you need in 2 minutes. That's not what researching is about, right? But it is your job as an academic, right? Or as a scholar who is arguing a position or establishing a thesis on something, to do your due diligence and play with the keywords, find sources that are supporting what you say or refuting what others are saying by bringing those sources in. And you just have to play with the keywords and see what comes up, right? So again, it takes some tinkering. So I'm going to move fairy tales, and I'm going to put Hans Christian Andersen to the main one, and then I'm going to move Disney. Let's see what comes up. All right, so let's see. Kissing the Mermaid, resistance, adaptation. Let's see. Well, let's see what this one's about. So this one is talking about a web comic series, but it does bring in both Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid and the animated Disney film adaptation. So I am going to read this article because I'm sure that I can come up with something that I can use in, and I may get to the end of the article and realize, I can't use it at all. But I can get some information from here. So I have my first source. Yay. So I'm going to either download it, I'm going to print it, right? I'm going to email it to myself so that I can save it for later. And the beauty of this is that when you email it to yourself, you have the citation. You can email it to yourself with the citation information. You just select MLA, right? That information is also here. Right here where you hit this little notepad where it says cite, and you have all of the citations, and you just scroll down and you find the works cited information, which is MLA right there. So I can save this to my bibliography, and when I'm working on my annotated bibliography or where I'm working on my notes for my paper, I'm going to put this in my citation, right, in my annotated bibliography, and I'm going to take notes, right? I'm going to take notes as to what is this article about? What is it talking about? What is it arguing? And then what can I use from this article, right, in my essay, in my paper? So I might copy and paste some of the things some of the quotes or some of the passages so that I know to use it later in my paper. I might print it out and highlight it, right? Just so that I know what I'm reading. And then I'm going to look for more sources, right? So let's see what else comes up. All right, so let's see this one, the body binary. That might be pertinent, right? The beauty of academic articles is that the titles are so descriptive. They literally tell you what they're talking about in the title. That's why they're so long. This one is 3 lines long, but it's giving you a lot of information. So again, you look at the title, that's the first indicator. I might want to read this. Then you look at the abstract or the summary, and maybe I want to read this, right? And it may not be talking exactly about what you're talking about in your essay, but there might be information that you can apply to your research, to your argument, right? Because not everything that you have to say has been said. That's even better, right? Because you don't want to just be regurgitating what other people are saying. So how can you use the information they're talking about, the arguments they're making, and apply it to the argument that you're making? So I'm going to read this, and I might talk about, this is talking about the body binary, able-bodiedness, and desirably disabled futures in the Little Mermaid, right? But how can I apply that to my argument that the original Little Mermaid story is better than the Disney version, right? And that's what I would go read and figure out. So that is how you search for sources, right? You just play with the keywords. You have to have an idea of a topic so that you can go narrowing down and coming up with some keywords, right? And playing around with the keywords. And I must add that the CCRI Library is the best place to start, but you also have Google at your disposal, right? That is an excellent tool. I know some of your professors may be against Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is a great secondary source. And what I mean about secondary source is that it is a great place to look for ideas, not to cite, because it is user edited, even though they have cracked down on who can edit and all of that information, but it is a good place to narrow down your topic. So say I wanted to talk about Hans Christian Andersen, The Little Mermaid, but I don't know what I want to say about it, right? So I'm going to look for it on Wikipedia. And it's The Little Mermaid. I want to look for the story, not the film. Let's just see. All right, so The Little Mermaid, here we go. And Wikipedia gives you a lot of information where you can read and say, I want to explore this more, right? And if you're stuck on finding a thesis, that's where you can explore, right? And the beauty of Wikipedia is that if you scroll to the bottom, there are also references, right? So you can look up these sources as well and possibly use them for your essay, right? So it is a great vehicle for finding keywords, for finding sources, for finding ideas on how to narrow down your topic, or where to develop your thesis or your topic from, right? So Wikipedia is great in that sense, but it is not a primary source. Now, I said Google is also a great source. So let's go to google.com. All right, so we'll go to, why do I keep misspelling Google? Google.com. I can search for Hans Christian Andersen, The Little Mermaid. Here we go. And let's add some keywords, just like we did in the CCRI library. So I'm going to put versus Disney, right? Because I'm saying that this one is better. The original is better, right? So versus Disney version. Let's just see what pops up, right? And with Google, you have to make sure you're verifying these sources, right? You don't just want to go on somebody's blog who's basically just ranting about something, right? You want to make sure that the person or people or entity or organization writing about these writing about this information is qualified to talk about it, right? Or is knowledgeable and is not just pulling information out of their behinds, right? You want to make sure that they're getting their information from, somewhere factual, or they're supporting it with evidence, just like you're supporting it your arguments with evidence by using outside sources. So, for example, peachyessay.com is not a source, right? That is probably somebody who wrote an essay and just put it up there, and it's probably worse than your essay. Yeah, I'm not, it's probably worse than anything anyone else would ever write, because they just put things on there trying to sell it, trying to prey on college students, right? So let's see, anything here. All right, edu, this one, let's see, this one, crosssection.wisconsin.edu. So let's click on this one, right? So that is, if you see edu, it's usually, especially Wisconsin, that's usually a university or an educational institution, right? So this is Mira Gert at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. All right, and you can tell if they're doing their due diligence, right? This is how you can verify that they're not just blogging about it or ranting about it. This person has sources and they have cited them, right? So they'll probably have, there we go, a bibliography. So this could be a very good source, right? You want to read through it and see what they're saying, right? So this is, it altered their meetings and changed the portrayal of women in particular. So this so far seems like they're talking about what I'm looking for. So this is a good source, right? So I don't know if I mentioned, but like I said, on the research guides on the CCRI Library, they do have, right, how to find, how to determine if a source is a good source. I believe, let me see. Let me, maybe Citation Help. What's the site? Nope. Research guides. All right, so let's look at all sources, all of the guides. Is it this one? All right, so again, and I can also provide you with some more resources, but I'm sure we've gone over as well in your readings, but it's basically how to distinguish between a knowledgeable, factual, accurate source and just stuff that's on the internet. So this one looks like a good source. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to cite it, right? I'm going to either print it out and highlight it, or I'm going to copy and paste some notes, put it into my annotated bibliography, and I'm going to keep researching, right? So I'm going to go back to Le Google, right? And keep looking through, see, like 1, 2, 3 help me. That's not a good source, right? Bustle.com. These are journalists who write there. So I can, that might be an accurate, good source. So I'm going to look at the 9 worst parts of the original Little Mermaid. So this is saying, this is talking about the original story. I'm going to read this and see if I can use this for my essay, right? This is a good, this is a source. This is a this is a Bustle's an online magazine, and so that is a source that you can use, right? So there you have it. You have 3, right? 3. You have 3 tools on how to search for sources. Again, I would start with the CCRI Library and use that as your starting point. But if you are having trouble narrowing your scope or your topic, or coming up with possible, topics, you can start with Wikipedia and spring from there, find some keywords, and then you can go onto the CCRI Library, or you can go to Google and also search there. But just, the caveat that not everything on the internet is reliable, right? So it's going to take a lot more discernment on your behalf to weed through Google, which is why I recommend you start with the CCRI Library. And of course, you always have the librarians there who can help you. And of course, you always have me. So that is how to search for sources. And don't forget to reach out to me. All right. I will see you next time.